In today's episode, we're exploring 5 wildlife professionals whose experience became their downfall, from a rookie zookeeper who trusted a faulty system to an alligator farm owner who let familiarity breed contempt. Let's begin with the first story, where one man's 4th week on the job became his last. It was August 14th, 2015, and the humid summer air hung heavy over the regional zoo as Derek Holloway prepared for what should have been a routine enclosure cleaning. The 23-year-old had been working as a probationary keeper for exactly 4 weeks, still learning the intricate safety protocols that governed every aspect of big cat care. The afternoon shift was critically understaffed due to budget cuts and summer vacation schedules, forcing supervisors to make difficult decisions about safety protocols. Derek had grown up in rural areas, where his fascination with wildlife had led him through a zoology degree and several unpaid internships before finally landing this entry-level position. His supervisor had noted Derek's natural confidence around animals during the hiring process, though some colleagues whispered that he seemed eager to prove himself beyond his experience level. The zoo's big cat facility housed 12 animals, including a magnificent Siberian tiger named Sasha, who had become Derek's favorite responsibility. Siberian tigers are the largest living cat subspecies, with adult males weighing up to 660 pounds and measuring over 10 feet in length. These apex predators possess incredible strength and lightning reflexes, capable of leaping horizontally up to 10 feet and vertically up to 12 feet. Despite their sometimes docile appearance in captivity, Siberian tigers retain all their natural hunting instincts and can attack with devastating speed when surprised or threatened. Their powerful jaws can deliver a bite force exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, while their retractable claws are designed to grip and tear flesh with surgical precision. Derek's fatal mistake began with a cascade of procedural failures during an understaffed afternoon. The electronic sensor system showed Sasha secured in the indoor shift pen, but what Derek didn't know was that a maintenance worker had left the connecting gate partially open after morning repairs. His supervisor, overwhelmed with managing multiple areas alone, had instructed Derek to proceed with cleaning without the required second keeper, violating standard protocols that demanded 2-person teams for all big cat enclosure access. Derek bypassed the required physical verification check, trusting the electronic display and his supervisor's rushed instructions. The lockout-tagout system remained incomplete, as Derek's eagerness to prove his competence led him to skip the manual gate inspection that would have revealed Sasha's access to the outdoor enclosure through the compromised barrier. As Derek entered the outdoor enclosure with his pressure washer and cleaning supplies, he began his systematic cleaning routine, starting with the elevated platforms where Sasha typically rested during afternoon hours. The noise from his pressure washer masked any sounds from the surrounding area, creating a false sense of security as he worked methodically across the concrete surfaces. Sasha had been resting in the outdoor enclosure's dense vegetation when the sudden spray of water from Derek's pressure washer startled her from her afternoon rest. The 420-pound predator moved with fluid grace across the enclosure, her golden coat marked with distinctive black stripes that seemed to ripple with each powerful stride. Derek's training had taught him to avoid sudden movements around big cats, but his shock at seeing Sasha caused him to stumble backward over his cleaning equipment. The tiger's predatory instincts activated instantly when Derek fell, triggering the chase response that had made Siberian tigers successful hunters across the wilderness. Sasha covered the 30 feet between them in a series of powerful bounds, her massive frame moving with explosive speed that left Derek no opportunity to reach the emergency exit or elevated escape platform. The tiger's powerful forepaws struck Derek's chest and shoulders, driving him to the concrete floor while her razor-sharp claws punctured through his uniform and into the soft tissue beneath. Derek's emergency radio clattered across the wet concrete as Sasha's massive weight pressed down on his torso. The tiger's attack followed typical big cat patterns, a series of devastating bites targeting Derek's neck and shoulders, each lasting 10 to 15 seconds before releasing and striking again. Her 4-inch canine teeth punctured vital arteries while her powerful claws raked across his torso. The pressure washer continued running nearby, its mechanical noise masking the brief struggle. The enclosure cameras were recording, but no one was actively watching the feed due to staffing shortages. Within 30 seconds, Derek's movements had begun to weaken as blood loss and trauma overwhelmed his system. Sasha continued her assault for another 20 seconds, her natural hunting sequence driving repeated attacks until Derek's body lay motionless on the wet concrete. Sasha backed away once the threat stopped moving, disappearing into the vegetation as the zoo's emergency alarms finally blared. The investigation later confirmed what everyone feared. The system had failed in every possible way. the supervisor's decision to allow solo cleaning due to staffing shortages, the maintenance worker's failure to properly secure the connecting gate, and Derek's bypassing of critical safety checks had created a perfect storm of negligence. Derek was pronounced dead at the scene, his dream of working with exotic animals ending in the very environment where he had felt most passionate. The zoo faced significant fines for inadequate supervision and protocol violations. Derek's death prompted immediate reviews of safety protocols at accredited facilities nationwide, with new requirements for enhanced supervision of probationary staff and stricter enforcement of existing safety procedures. His family established a scholarship fund for aspiring zookeepers. Yet big cats weren't the only animals that could prove deadly when safety systems failed. In the cold waters off the coast, a marine researcher's dedication to her work would put her directly in the path of one of the ocean's most efficient predators. It was June 3, 2017, and the gray waters reflected the overcast sky as Rachel Winters prepared for her 41st cage dive with the federal shark tagging program. The 28-year-old graduate researcher had spent the past 2 years studying predator behavior patterns, building a reputation among colleagues for her meticulous data collection and willingness to extend dive times beyond standard protocols. Rachel had earned her marine biology degree from a state university, where her undergraduate thesis on shark sensory systems had caught the attention of federal researchers. Her colleagues often noted that Rachel seemed more comfortable underwater than on the surface, frequently volunteering for the most challenging dives and staying submerged longer than required to capture behavioral footage. The morning's dive had been particularly productive, with Rachel documenting feeding behaviors from a 15-foot female that had been tagged the previous season. Her dive partner had already exited the cage according to standard rotation schedules, but the supervisor had stepped away to fix a critical piece of equipment, and in the confusion, Rachel's partner exited early. Rachel remained alone in the cage longer than regulations permitted, determined not to lose valuable behavioral data that could impact her research funding. Great white sharks are apex predators that can reach lengths exceeding 20 feet and weights of over 5,000 pounds. These magnificent hunters possess incredible speed and agility, capable of breaching completely out of the water when attacking prey. Their sensory systems can detect electrical fields as weak as those produced by a fish's gills, while their powerful jaws contain multiple rows of serrated teeth designed to slice through flesh and bone. Great whites are naturally curious animals that often investigate unfamiliar objects through exploratory bites, behavior that can prove fatal when humans are involved. Rachel's fatal decision came when the cage door's corroded hinge mechanism began to fail under the stress of increasing wave action. The cage had been flagged for repair weeks earlier, but the replacement hinge parts had been delayed due to budget constraints. Rather than signaling for immediate recovery as protocols required, Rachel attempted to manually secure the door while remaining inside the cage, fearing that surfacing would mean losing critical behavioral footage and potentially jeopardizing her research funding. The deteriorating surface conditions caused the cage to yaw unpredictably as Rachel struggled with the compromised door mechanism. Strong currents and chum dispersion had attracted several large sharks to the area, including a 16-foot male that had been circling the cage with increasing interest. As Rachel extended her arm through the failing door framework to reach the external latch, her movements triggered the shark's investigative response. The great white's strike came without warning as the weakened cage door gave way, its compromised structure no longer providing adequate protection. The shark's massive head struck Rachel's extended arm with tremendous force, its razor-sharp teeth severing through wetsuit material, flesh, and bone with devastating efficiency. The predator released its grip after the initial investigative bite, following typical great white behavior patterns, but Rachel's blood dispersing through the water column and her compromised position in the damaged cage triggered continued interest from the same animal. The cage's twisted framework trapped Rachel's diving equipment, preventing her from reaching the surface, while her emergency air supply became compromised. The research team initiated emergency recovery procedures when they finally noticed the situation developing below, but the combination of blood dispersion, turbulent water, and shark activity in the area made immediate intervention dangerous. Emergency marine units responded after roughly 35 minutes due to deteriorating sea conditions, but Rachel had already succumbed to blood loss and drowning. The incident prompted immediate suspension of the cage diving program and comprehensive reviews of underwater safety protocols, particularly regarding equipment maintenance and solo dive supervision procedures. Rachel's research contributions were compiled into a memorial publication that advanced understanding of great white behavior, ensuring her scientific legacy would continue benefiting conservation efforts. However, ocean predators weren't the only animals that could turn deadly when safety protocols were compromised. In the remote wilderness, a wildlife sanctuary manager's familiarity with dangerous animals would lead him to make a fatal miscalculation about territorial boundaries. It was October 22, 2014, and the crisp mountain air carried the scent of approaching winter as Paul Hendricks conducted his evening rounds at the private wildlife rehabilitation sanctuary nestled in a remote wilderness region. The 45-year-old facility manager had been caring for non-releasable bears for over 12 years, developing what he believed was an intuitive understanding of their behavior patterns and moods. The sanctuary housed 8 bears, including a recently arrived adult male grizzly that had been transferred from an overcrowded facility just 48 hours earlier. Paul had built the sanctuary from nothing, using his inheritance and wildlife management degree to create a haven for bears that could never return to the wild due to injuries or behavioral issues. His dedication to the animals was legendary among wildlife rehabilitation circles, though some colleagues had expressed concerns about his tendency to work alone during evening hours when staffing was minimal. The newest arrival, a 600-pound male named Kodiak, had been showing signs of disorientation and stress from the recent transport and sedation. The maintenance buffer zone's security had been compromised for weeks. The fence had been damaged during a severe thunderstorm and had been temporarily patched with scrap materials, while Paul waited for proper replacement sections. The sanctuary operated under strict protocols that required visual confirmation of all animals before entering any enclosure area. But Paul's years of experience had led to occasional shortcuts when dealing with familiar animals. However, Kodiak's behavioral unpredictability and the compromised barrier system created a dangerous combination that Paul underestimated. Grizzly bears are among the continent's most powerful predators, with adult males weighing up to 800 pounds and possessing incredible strength that allows them to flip over 700-pound rocks while foraging. These massive omnivores can run up to 25 miles per hour and are capable of crushing a bowling ball with their jaws, which can exert over 1,200 pounds of pressure per square inch. Grizzlies are particularly unpredictable when stressed or disoriented, with their natural defensive instincts often overriding any familiarity with human caretakers. Paul's fatal mistake occurred when he entered what should have been a secure maintenance buffer zone without establishing visual confirmation of Kodiak's location. The massive grizzly had been systematically testing the makeshift barrier over several days, using his powerful claws to exploit weak points in the temporary repairs, until he eventually created a gap large enough to access the supposedly bear-proof area, where Paul assumed he would be safe. The disoriented bear had been pacing restlessly in this new territory, his stress from recent relocation making him hyper-vigilant to any perceived threats. As Paul approached the area with replacement materials for the damaged infrastructure, he failed to notice the fresh excavation marks and tracks in the soft soil that indicated Kodiak's recent breach of the compromised barrier. The bear had been resting in dense vegetation that provided complete concealment from the observation areas, his disorientation from transport and sedation leaving him in a heightened state of defensive alertness. Paul's footsteps triggered Kodiak's defensive response as the stressed bear perceived the human presence as a potential threat to his expanded territory. Kodiak's charge from the concealed position caught Paul completely off guard, the massive bear exploding from cover with a speed that had made grizzlies successful predators across the wilderness. Paul attempted to retreat toward the maintenance gate, but found himself trapped between the charging bear and the chain-link barrier, with no elevated escape route available in the compromised buffer zone. The grizzly's massive paws struck Paul with bone-crushing force, driving him to the ground while razor-sharp claws raked across his chest and shoulders. Kodiak's powerful jaws clamped down on Paul's head and neck, his stress and disorientation from recent relocation contributing to the intensity and duration of the attack. The bear's massive weight pressed down on Paul's torso, while his claws opened deep wounds across the sanctuary manager's arms and legs. Paul's movements gradually ceased as blood loss and trauma overwhelmed his system, but Kodiak continued his assault for several more minutes before retreating to the far side of the area. The bear's disorientation and stress from the recent relocation had triggered an extreme defensive response that left him unable to recognize when the threat had been neutralized. Paul's body lay motionless near the damaged infrastructure, surrounded by the repair materials he had brought to secure the compromised barrier. The scheduled welfare check discovered Paul approximately 35 minutes later, immediately initiating emergency protocols and calling for medical assistance. Paul was pronounced dead at the scene, his lifelong dedication to bear welfare ending in an encounter with an animal he had hoped to help heal. The aftermath revealed the tragic irony. Paul had died trying to fix the very barrier that should have protected him. The sanctuary implemented immediate protocol changes, prohibiting entry into any area without confirmed barrier integrity and requiring radio contact during all maintenance activities. Paul's death prompted discussions about the challenges of caring for recently relocated wildlife and the need for enhanced safety measures during animal acclimation periods. But large predators weren't the only animals that could prove deadly when familiarity bred complacency. In a research facility, a primate technician's years of experience would fail to protect her from one of humanity's closest relatives. It was March 9th, 2016, and the fluorescent lights hummed softly in the primate research facility as Elena Park prepared evening medications for the chimpanzee colony she had worked with for over 3 years. The 31-year-old senior technician was well respected among her colleagues for her expertise in primate cognition studies and her ability to work calmly with even the most challenging animals. Recent budget cuts had forced the facility to implement a new after-hours staffing schedule that left Elena alone with the animals during evening routines, a cost-saving measure that had never previously resulted in incidents. Elena had earned her degree in animal behavior from a state university, where her undergraduate research on primate social dynamics had led directly to her current position. Her colleagues often noted that the chimpanzees seemed to respond better to Elena than to other staff members, and she had developed what appeared to be genuine relationships with several individuals in the colony. The evening routine typically involved medication preparation and final welfare checks, tasks that Elena had performed hundreds of times without incident. The chimpanzee colony consisted of 12 animals housed in interconnected enclosures designed to promote natural social behaviors while allowing for individual management when necessary. Elena's favorite was a dominant male named Caesar, who weighed approximately 150 pounds and had been exhibiting increased territorial behaviors throughout the previous week. The facility's protocols required 2-person teams for all direct animal contact, but evening medication preparation was considered low risk since it occurred through secure feeding ports. Chimpanzees are humanity's closest living relatives, sharing over 98% of our genetic code while possessing strength approximately twice that of adult humans. These highly intelligent primates live in complex social hierarchies maintained through displays of dominance and submission, with adult males being particularly territorial and unpredictable. Despite their human-like appearance and behaviors, chimpanzees retain powerful predatory instincts and can attack with devastating speed when they perceive threats to their status or territory. Elena's fatal mistake occurred during routine medication preparation, when the sliding service hatch became stuck due to wear in the track mechanism. As she applied extra pressure to force the hatch closed, the latch mechanism failed internally, leaving the feeding port secured only by the external handle. Elena believed the system was properly locked and began her medication procedures, unaware that Caesar had been observed manipulating the hatch in previous weeks, testing its mechanisms with the curiosity typical of his species. Caesar's intelligence and problem-solving abilities had led him to understand the feeding port's operation, and he quickly discovered that the compromised latch could be manipulated from inside the enclosure. The chimpanzee's powerful hands worked the sliding mechanism, while Elena prepared medications at the nearby station, his increased territorial behaviors making him more attentive to human activities in his space. The service hatch slid open as Caesar applied his full strength to the failed mechanism, his powerful arms reaching through the opening to seize Elena's clothing and pull her toward the enclosure. Elena's struggles only intensified Caesar's aggressive response, as his territorial instincts drove him to eliminate the perceived threat to his domain. The chimpanzee's massive hands gripped Elena's head and shoulders, while his powerful jaws targeted her face and throat area. Elena's emergency calls for help echoed through the facility corridors, but the new after-hours staffing model meant no immediate assistance was available. The tranquilization equipment was stored in a locked emergency station within the building, but the dual-key access system required 2 authorized personnel to prevent accidental deployment. Caesar's attack continued for several minutes, as his dominance behaviors demanded complete submission from the human who had violated his territorial boundaries. The chimpanzee's assault focused on Elena's head, face, and upper torso, his powerful jaws and hands causing massive trauma through repeated strikes and bites. Caesar's attack pattern followed typical chimpanzee aggression, targeting vulnerable areas with devastating force while using his superior strength to prevent Elena from escaping or defending herself effectively. The combination of facial mutilation, carotid damage, and severe head trauma overwhelmed Elena's system within minutes. The automated alarm system activated, but with no staff on site during after-hours operations, the alert was routed to an off-site monitoring service. Emergency responders arrived within 18 minutes of the initial alarm, but Caesar's assault had already caused catastrophic injuries that made medical intervention impossible. Elena was pronounced dead at the scene, her years of dedication to primate research ending in an encounter with an animal she had believed understood their relationship. Caesar was successfully tranquilized and relocated to a maximum security facility designed for aggressive primates. The incident sent shockwaves through the research community, forcing facilities nationwide to confront the reality that budget cuts had pushed safety protocols beyond acceptable limits. Federal oversight agencies cited the facility for inadequate emergency preparedness and implemented new requirements for staffing during animal care activities. However, primates weren't the only animals that could turn deadly when overconfidence replaced caution. In the humid bayous, an alligator farm owner's familiarity with dangerous reptiles would lead him into the jaws of one of the continent's most efficient predators. It was July 18, 2013, and the oppressive summer heat shimmered above the murky waters of the family alligator farm as Tommy Boudreau prepared for the afternoon's final feeding demonstration. The 34-year-old farm manager had been working with alligators since childhood, learning the family business from his father and grandfather who had established the operation decades earlier. The facility combined commercial breeding with tourism, offering visitors close encounters with some of the largest alligators in the southeastern region. Tommy had grown up surrounded by alligators, developing an intuitive understanding of their behavior patterns and feeding responses that impressed visitors and wildlife officials alike. His informal handling demonstrations often pushed the boundaries of industry safety standards, but his years of experience had never resulted in serious incidents. The farm housed over 200 alligators, ranging from juveniles to massive breeding bulls that exceeded 12 feet in length and weighed over 800 pounds. The afternoon feeding demonstration had concluded 30 minutes earlier, with the last tour group departing as the facility prepared to close for the evening. Tommy's routine included retrieving any equipment left near the water's edge and securing the feeding platforms for evening hours. His phone had slipped from his pocket during the demonstration, landing on the low freeboard dock that extended into the shallow breeding pond where the largest males established their territories. American alligators are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years, with adult males reaching lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds. These powerful reptiles possess bite forces exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch, making them capable of crushing turtle shells and large bones with ease. Alligators are ambush predators that can remain motionless for hours before exploding into action with lightning speed, often attacking from below the water's surface where their approach remains completely hidden. Tommy's fatal decision came when he stepped onto the feeding dock without a spotter or restraint pole, equipment that safety protocols required for all water-adjacent activities. His confidence in reading alligator behavior had led him to believe that the recent feeding would leave the animals lethargic and uninterested in surface activity. However, the competitive feeding environment had actually drawn several large males to the shallow water near the dock, where they remained alert for any additional feeding opportunities. As Tommy knelt on the low dock to retrieve his phone from the wooden planking, his movements created vibrations that transmitted through the shallow water to the sensitive pressure receptors along the alligator's jaws and bodies. The largest male, a 12-foot breeding bull named Leviathan, had been resting in the shallow water near the dock's edge, his massive body perfectly camouflaged against the muddy bottom. Tommy's presence above triggered the alligator's feeding response, as the vibrations mimicked those created by prey animals drinking at the water's edge. Leviathan's strike came from the shallow water as Tommy leaned over the dock's edge, the massive alligator's jaws erupting from the surface with explosive force. The reptile's powerful tail provided the thrust needed to launch his 800-pound body partially onto the low dock, his massive jaws clamping down on Tommy's torso and arms with bone-crushing pressure. The alligator's death roll began immediately, the spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause rapid drowning. Tommy's struggles only intensified Leviathan's feeding response, as the alligator dragged him into the shallow water, where the death roll could be executed most effectively. The massive reptile's jaws maintained their crushing grip while his powerful body twisted through the murky water, causing massive internal injuries and preventing Tommy from reaching the surface to breathe. The attack lasted roughly 30 to 40 seconds before the alligator released him, leaving Tommy's body floating motionless in the shallow water. The alligator retreated to deeper water after completing his feeding behavior, leaving Tommy's body floating in the shallow area near the dock. The facility's security cameras had recorded the entire incident, providing clear documentation of the attack sequence for investigators. No staff members were present in the immediate area, as Tommy had been conducting his final equipment check alone after the facility's closing time. The morning shift supervisor discovered the incident when reviewing overnight security footage during routine morning procedures. Emergency services were immediately contacted, but Tommy had been deceased for several hours, What followed was a grim reminder that even decades of experience meant nothing when basic safety protocols were ignored. Leviathan was not destroyed, as wildlife officials determined the alligator had been exhibiting natural feeding behaviors in response to Tommy's presence in his territory. The incident resulted in immediate suspension of the facility's operations pending investigation, with state wildlife officials citing multiple prior safety violations. The combination of Tommy's death and the facility's history of protocol violations ultimately led to permanent closure of the operation. Tommy's death became a tragic reminder that even experienced professionals can fall victim to overconfidence when dealing with apex predators. Thanks for watching. Click the next video for the next stories.